Hello and welcome to the President's Podcast right here on the record with the Ohio Senate. The views the news excludes. I'm John Fortney, the Director of Communication with the Senate Republican Caucus. That is the majority caucus in the Ohio Senate. Back to school, kids are back in class, and we have a former teacher on the President's Podcast who also happens to be State Senator Sandra O'Brien from the 32nd District. That's Geneva, which includes Ashtabula, Trumbull, and of course, Geauga counties. Great to have you on the program.
Thank you, John. It's great to be on the program.
When we roll right into fall and you're a former teacher, first of all, what did you teach and what goes through your head this time of year?
Okay, my bachelor's from Bowling Green in Ohio is in elementary education. So I'm certified to teach 1 through 8. I taught a little bit of 3rd, I taught 4th, I taught 6th, I taught 7th. My master's is in school administration, and I also taught at the collegiate level at Lakeland Community College. So this time of year also reminds me, besides being a teacher, also mother and grandmother, and busy time of year to get your children ready to go back. And when you're a teacher, it's not just the physical things that you do, you mentally prepare your children. But also, I would teach, I would read stories to them before they were born, and I know how to teach somebody to read, and I said, I'm going to use it on my own children. Hopefully it helped.
Speaking of that, teaching children how to read, we went back to the science of reading. What is that program called? Because it was basically what we had when I was growing up, where you pronounced the word the way it sounded, you used phonics, and then we went to the other system and we saw test scores dropping. Are you on board with the science of reading?
Absolutely, and I'm older, and I believe back then we called it phonics. Right. Now, I would use sight words as well, but the basics would be phonics. Why we ever changed was wrong. And by the time some of us caught on to it, it had already been ingrained. So now we call it something a little bit flashier, but it is still basic phonics where you go over word sounds and give the children as much experience as you can with that.
We hear a lot, when it comes to putting the budget together, the new 2-year state budget, and we've talked a lot about it on this program, obviously, and you're part of those discussions as well. But I'm interested from your perspective as a former teacher, and by the way, a former Ashtabula County auditor as well, and we'll talk more about property taxes here in a moment. But from your perspective as a teacher, when it comes to school resources, we hear so much about schools don't have enough money, and the state isn't funding education properly, and the unconstitutional school funding system, which we've said on this program is a lie. It is a constitutional school funding system. Ever since the Ohio Supreme Court released the original court case in 2003, every state budget comes with a new school funding formula, and until somebody challenges that or it's ruled unconstitutional, it is constitutional. And in the last 2 General Assemblies, there was an additional $3 billion invested into K through 12 schools. And in this General Assembly, nearly an additional $1 billion. So that's basically $4 billion over 3 GAs. Do schools have enough funding?
Yes, our public schools do have enough funding. How do I know that? Because they're not spending it all. They're doing what we call a carryover balance. That is money they don't need. And many of our schools are carrying over 50, 60. We've got schools carrying over 100%. Government, which the public schools are, is not supposed to hoard money. The only reason we have any carryover, here's my county auditor hat coming out, is because when you get your tax bills at the beginning of the year, as auditor, the treasurer has to wait for you to send your money in and then get it to the auditor. Well, 2 or 3 months went by, so we allowed the schools, and really any political subdivision, to ask for an advance to keep you going till we do what we call the settlement and give you all the money. It has gotten totally out of hand, really. And it's the way I believe is we should be actually have a law where they can't save all that money with no purpose.
Well, one of the interesting things a lot of people were unaware of until we started talking about it was of the 611 school districts around the state of Ohio, if you added up the cash carryover of all 611, it was $10.1 billion statewide. That's a real eye-opening amount. I think it stunned a lot of people to understand that. In fact, Columbus City Schools, to start this school year, had a $394 million cash carryover. And you say, John, how do I find that information out? Can I do that for my own school district? And yeah, you can. You go to the Department of Education and Workforce website, search 5-year forecast. That's 5-year forecast. And then you can pull up your own school district and see what their cash carryover was to start this year, the beginning of the school year. And then, for example, next school year, Columbus City Schools is forecasting a $327 million cash carryover. And in the next 27, they're forecasting a $223 million cash carryover. Maybe the idea is cash carryovers aren't bad if it's enough money to cover like a major roof repair or some type of facility issue. But these kinds of stunning cash carryovers, it's like you're running a small city or a medium-sized city. So that's something that the people need to be aware of.
Absolutely, they do. When you look at our per pupil spending, let's stay with Columbus and even include Cleveland. They're at average $20,000 per pupil. Now let's talk about the problem we have in Ohio with absenteeism in our students. It's rampant and it's large. Those two districts have over 50% of their students not there. Suddenly, their per pupil money has gone from $20,000 a pupil to $40,000 a pupil. It's not right. And when you ask the schools, how are you going to address it? You just get a turnaround, no real answer. What do I think? I think we need to work with law enforcement, show up at the homes of the children. I mean, there's some adults responsible for them. They need to be in school. It's state law.
And that became really exacerbated during COVID.
Yes.
Where your truancy officials with the district they couldn't find the kids. They had no idea where these kids were. And that is why also you start to see the lag in test scores, because students suddenly were underperforming, not anywhere close to grade level because of what happened during COVID, and now you're trying to make up that process.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up because, as you mentioned earlier, we keep bringing additional billions of dollars into our public schools. At the same time we're doing that, the test scores in math and reading are getting lower and lower and lower. So the taxpayers are not getting what they paid for. They're really not.
You can't throw money at a problem and expect the problem to be solved. There has to be some results that you can show the taxpayers. And that's sort of where we've run up against a wall. Taxpayers have been very fed up, and you may have heard about the petition to get enough signatures to put an amendment on the ballot that would repeal property taxes in the state of Ohio. So the legislature responded, correct? Were you satisfied with what the legislature, at least in the Senate, did with the state budget as far as property tax reform?
I was very satisfied, and I had an integral part in helping that get through and actually putting the wording in it. I have to say I was disappointed in Governor DeWine when he line item vetoed all of that. So we'll see what happens when we get back there in a few years. But I also want to mention our public schools today, it's called mission creep. They are there to teach basics, and we have gotten so far away from that. I mean, we've got health centers, we've got huge athletics, all kinds of things. Well, there's only so much time in a day. So we're losing some of that focus on basics. And then we wonder why the test scores are poor. The poor teachers are like, what am I supposed to do here? I can't do all of this.
Extracurriculars are important and definitely add to the educational experience, but you have to be able to do the basics. You have to be able to graduate, get a diploma, be prepared for the next level, whether it's college or sports or whatever it is. The basics have to be met at first.
And basics are during the day. Extracurricular are after, technically, the school day. So, yeah, no,
point.
exactly right. So I guess when we come to property taxes, I can tell you I've been to 2 of my county fairs. Anyone that came up to me to talk about this property tax petition, they were all for it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it sounds good, but what do you replace the funds with? Remember, property taxes, the state doesn't have anything to do. The state of Ohio does not raise property taxes. We have policy in there, correct, that we'll talk about here in just a moment. But it truly is the best showcase of local control, or best example of local control, that if there's a levy on the ballot for schools or for the library or for public transportation, then homeowners and property owners, can decide, as well as all the other registered voters who maybe are not property owners, to whether they raise their property taxes or not.
So I go into my teacher mode with them, and I tell them, let me tell you what our property taxes fund. The majority of it goes to our public schools, some to our libraries, and police and fire. And I said, so understand that that's going to affect these entities. And I had one gal say to me, I don't care. I am not going to lose my house over property taxes. John, I didn't know what to say, and that's pretty rare.
Well, one of the things we heard during the Select Committee on Housing that went around the state of Ohio a couple years ago, we heard from retired teachers who maybe they retired in the late 80s, early 90s, so they're fixed income. And their house has been paid for 25 or 30 years as well, but they were afraid that there was a real risk that they could lose their house because they weren't sure that they could keep up with the property taxes because of the increased valuations. And so I hear that side of the story. And that is something that is very troubling for our seniors. And we do have a homestead exemption in the state of Ohio. But I guess to get back to the veto override process, emergency and replacement levies. This is an important part about levy education. Emergency and replacement levies, we banned them. The General Assembly banned them, abolished it, okay? Then the governor vetoed that. The House just overrode that. Why is it important to get rid of replacement and emergency levies?
Because the average voter is busy with their own life. They do not know the intricacies of some of the things they're voting on, and they should. This is America. They need to know what their tax dollars are going to be used for. So they get replacement confused with renewal. Renewal is everything's the same, no increase. Replacement is, oh yes, any new construction, home values going up, you will see an increase. And in my area here, we saw massive increases in taxes in the last few years. Now, emergencies. Those of us, when I ask, what do you think an emergency is? It's something that just happened and it's terrible and we got to fix it. Right. Well, on the committee, on the education committee, I asked some people giving testimonies, what's your school district? Do you have an emergency levy? Yes, we do. What's the emergency? And the person actually said, teaching our children. I said, that's your job. That's not an emergency. So that is deceiving. That is truly deceiving. And that's part of the reason I believe we will change that when the Senate gets down to Columbus. It's not right.
And don't those also fall outside of the anti-inflationary guardrails that I think it was House Bill 920 back in the late 70s established that said, okay, this levy is going to raise this amount of money and no more. But those levies, emergency and replacement levies, they fall outside of those guardrails. That's one of the little secrets that school systems and other governmental entities don't really want you to know about, right? It's a way to game the system.
Right, and it's things like that they don't understand. And it was Governor Voinovich, who used to be Cuyahoga County Auditor, who put that bill through when he was in the legislature. And I remember thinking, okay, inside millage is unvoted millage. Yes, Ohioans, you pay taxes that you don't vote on, but there's a cap on it. So I said, I don't know why Governor Voinovich didn't add inside millage. So I sent it over to the Legislative Service Commission, and they said, because it's in the Constitution, inside millage. I said, oh, okay, that made a lot of sense.
I think it's 10 mills.
It is 10 mills, right. But that's not just 10 mills for the schools. That is 10 mills combined for all your political subdivisions. By that I mean cities, villages, townships. I know I'm talking a little bit of auditor jargon.
Well, no, we like that. That's how we learn. I mean, you have really the both sides covered, because not only from the school perspective as a teacher, right, but also from the county auditor perspective, where it's important that the people, the citizens, the voters, and the electorate understand these concepts, because it does get into the weeds quickly and becomes very complex. And then people are outraged when the new valuation process hits. And why am I paying $1,200 more a year in my property taxes?
Right. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the County Budget Commission.
Yeah, what
is that? It's a little bit yawning, I know, but it affects you. It basically is made up, the county auditor is the statutory chair all the time. And then you have the treasurer, and then you have the prosecutor. And they are the watchdogs for the taxpayers. And believe you, the taxpayers need watchdogs. So what we do is we look at your budget. You come in and present it every year. And we make sure that the money that you're collected is going for what you told the voters it was going to go for, and you're not hoarding tax dollars. I remember once when I was county auditor, there was one of the township trustees was also a fireman, and I said, "Wait a minute here. I'm seeing like $500,000, a small township, in your line item here. What is going on?" Because again, we're not going to allow you to hoard money without a purpose. He goes, "We're saving for a fire truck." I said, "Put that in writing, okay?" So I could tell constituents, which he did. But my point is that look at the school's carryover balance over billions of dollars.
It's supposed to be a school budget, not a slush fund.
Exactly right. So the tax commissioner should look at all that and lower levies or not increase millage if they don't think so. And I know some of my peers said, "You're not supposed to do that if the people vote on it." I said, "Oh, yes, we are." And the Budget Commission has always had that authority. But sometimes people get a little shy. And, well, I know the elected official here, and I know the elected official there. Well, you know what? I'm going to represent my taxpayers.
But it's a check and balance on the millage rate, right?
Yes.
It's a check and balance on the total millage. And if you can send some of the money back to the taxpayer, that's called responsible government. And this is something that the General Assembly will also be consider overriding, because it was one of the governor's vetoes.
Absolutely.
Correct?
Absolutely.
County
Yes.
budget commissions. I bet a lot of people didn't know that there was a county budget commission. I didn't know that until we were having that discussion. Before I leave the property tax issue, if property taxes were abolished in Ohio, what would make up the difference? Now, you wouldn't have to make up the whole difference. It might bring some consolidation to local and local government, but yet there'd be a lot of people screaming about, well, where school districts, where are we going to get this money from? Well, you have sales taxes and income taxes in Ohio. There'd probably be some pretty outraged people over how high those percentages would have to climb.
Exactly. And the ones, not that I'm not worried about all the subdivisions that might be affected, but I am concerned about township trustees. Ashtabula County has more townships. We're the largest in the state of Ohio, and Trumbull County is second.
And townships can't levy an income tax, correct?
That's right. That's where I was going with this. I could see us doing legislation. I'd be happy to carry it where they can do income tax. And don't forget, I live in a township. Okay, I'm going to get all this money back from my property taxes that I'm no longer going to have to pay. So I would be more than willing to do an income tax to my townships, because townships add a lot to government, and there's sometimes a little bit of a movement to get rid of them. The big cities can handle it, and we live in a township for a reason. I live on a small farm. We like it that way. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So
location, affordability, things
exactly
like that.
Right. But the other thing is that the property taxes, you're supposed to go to your citizens, tell them what you need the money for. Now, if they decided, no, you have too much, maybe schools might have to do with less. Maybe this is a way to force them to tighten up, because as a senator, we already give them billions of dollars through our half, we call it the foundation aid. This is not our responsibility. This is for the taxpayers, and if they choose not to do it anymore, I don't know. I guess we'll have to live with that.
Do you think with all of the property tax reforms, including the replacement, the emergency levies, the county budget commission, and some of the other little more complexities in the language changes that the governor overrode, do you think that would go a long way into reining in the system in Ohio?
It would very much help. However, it is too late for property tax bills next year. Don't forget, the tax commissioner sends us basically the information we need to do the taxes, and he's got to have some time for any changes, and then it's got to go out like the end of the year or the beginning of the year. There really isn't enough time. So the voter, and this is supposedly, they're trying to get it on the ballot next year, so it might be too late for that.
One last tax question for you. When I started in the Ohio Senate 10 years ago, there were 9 income tax brackets. Now there's only 1. That's a lot of progress. Do you think it has made a difference when it comes to business and industry and economic environment and reducing the overall bureaucratic and tax burden on the people?
Absolutely, and I'm so proud of my fellow legislators and senators for finally getting the flat tax through. I'm a gal who'd like to see no tax there. We talk about Ohio's brain drain. A lot of our young people are moving out of Ohio. Look at some of the states they're going to. Texas, no income tax. Yeah, so you think that doesn't affect them? Oh, yes, it does. And I'd like us to get there. And no matter what our friends on the other side of the aisle say, when you lower taxes, government revenue goes up because people have more money to spend.
Well, certainly that we've been running a surplus every time that
Yes.
we reduce income tax brackets, right?
Exactly.
And so the rainy day fund, or we call it the budget stabilization fund, the BSF, otherwise known as the rainy day fund, we continue to build that fund. So yeah, reducing the tax burden does create additional revenue.
It does. It absolutely does.
Tell me where we are today. This is a fantastic, fantastic facility called Spire Academy in Geneva. And what do they do here? We're sitting just above this basically Olympic-sized track, and they have a phenomenal facility here, over many acres.
Yes, and I've been a fan of the place since they built it, and I spent years of my life here swimming, and I'm no longer here because I live 3.5 hours from the Capitol, and it takes a lot of my time, but I'm very proud of it. It is a world renowned facility, basically for athletes training, competition, and now they have an academy, so we've got students here that go to school here, and yet they're right into their sport right here. The changes I have seen ever since they started, it's pretty awesome, and I'm probably one of their biggest cheerleader. And it's a gym that not many people know about, because if you don't have an athlete or you don't follow athletics, you might not know. But I'm really proud of them. They're doing well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is like NFL pro-like level facilities, and I even saw where there's some players in the NBA that went here as well. So this is really a gym for your district and your backyard. Not to mention, if you like wine, you have to do the Ashtabula or the Geneva on the Lake wine trail. It's amazing how many quality wines and wineries are just right around the corner here.
Exactly. And they have over, like, I think it's over 750,000 square feet enclosed, and that does include their outdoor facilities here. Yes, we are known for our wineries, but don't forget, we have, Ashtabula County is unlike Erie. We have like 26 miles of frontage on Lake Erie, and that's a huge draw too. So yeah, Geneva on the Lake, Geneva, Harpersfield, but now they're getting into Conneaut and Ashtabula, and right, if you want to spend a few days and visit our wineries, great. But there's a lot. Look at we just talked about covered bridges, and yeah. I mean, it's an awesome thing to bring your family, do the covered bridge map, and see what we have here. It's historic, it's educational, and it's fun.
Yeah, the semi-cinquentennial, America's 250th birthday is coming up, and all of our members are doing a little in their own district tribute to what's special in their Senate district, and we did the covered bridge tribute today. And you'll see that here a little bit later on our website as we build into next year, which is the semi-cinquentennial. Senator Sandra O'Brien, Republican from Geneva, the 32nd District, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, too.
Thanks to Spire Academy for allowing us to do the podcast here, and we will see you soon.